Our very own Golden Gate Breakfast Club member Carl Walsh graduated from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. Next, in Los Angeles, he formed the 21st Street Theatre Company. There he served as its artistic director and won critics' awards for both acting and directing. During his 20 years on stage, he was drawn deeper and deeper into corporate business. To fund his early theatrical career, Carl accepted a humble position as a part-time helper in a record store. Eventually, he found himself in a much more impressive role as a director of information systems. In 2009, Carl was a finalist in the World Champion of Public Speaking, which helped launch his speaking career. For the past 12 years, he has spoken nationwide. As we have seen, he has also mastered the computer screen. He is a regular on Derek Arden's monthly night live Zoomcast in London. He and his partner, on the Oval Table podcast, Doug Bowers, are launching the Alpha Dog Business Coaching Group. They provide the tools for friction-free communication, team building, and strategic thinking. We are all fascinated by showbiz, and as we heard, many of us have secret ambitions. Get ready to discover some of the parallels between the art of performance and the art of business. As a bonus, some of the lessons he learned from famous artists. Sit back and get comfortable as we learn how the skills honed on the stage are the very foundations of successful business strategies. To discuss Behind the Curtain, business lessons from the theatre stage, please welcome Carl Walsh.
So really, theater and business, theater, the art of make-believe, of pretend, has something to do with business? Let me put it succinctly. Excellent creativity thrives on superior business, and superior business thrives on excellent creativity. But of course, where does the creativity come from? Think back to when you were young. Every child is an artist. If it's finger painting, drawing in the sand, or drawing on the wall with crayons, every child is an artist. Now, the trick is, how long can we maintain as an artist? Most people think they aren't creative. They believe they lost it when they grew up and had to deal with life's realities and challenges. But believe me, you haven't lost it. You just misplaced it. Although it is true that often we see people who see the world in a more creative light when they're first starting out. Picasso said he drew better when he was 10 years old than he ever did again. And think back to your youth again. Maybe you were open to limitless possibilities because you didn't know any better. You hadn't yet been blunted by experience or dulled by familiarity. And I'm sure some of you right now are thinking, well, yeah, but isn't experience a good thing? Well, yes, of course it is. And that is what you bring to bear on that creative idea once you've birthed it. You can refine it, you can adjust it, you can evaluate it. That's where the experience comes in. You own it, you refine it, you improve it, you experience, and your experience will help you do that. But you need that initial creative spark that comes from the child within, that acts as the foundational vision of what is to come. Buddhists call it the beginner's mind. And according to the foundational research done by Donald McKinnon at the University of California back in the 1960s, and let me just take a moment here to talk about Mr. McKinnon. Mr. McKinnon was a spy during World War II. He managed Station S for the Special Services. His job was personality assessment. He would assess people and find out which ones would make good spies, which ones would make good counter-espionage, and also which ones might be good leaders for resistance groups. So he became quite the expert and world-renowned as that personality assessor. Well, he became very interested on how creativity works in the world beyond the performing arts. And what he found was that some of the best thinkers in business, such as scientists, architects, mathematicians, engineers, they spend a great deal of their time playing games. He found that those with a predisposition for play succeeded the most. And game playing can be an essential part of keeping the creative juices flowing and nourishing the child within. Steve Jobs had it. Notice Apple hasn't been all that creative since his passing. Einstein, Edison, Richard Branson, Elon Musk still plays video games with his buddy Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, all ardent game players. And it's the same in theater. Playfulness is how we find the magic on stage. I was, back in the 1980s, I was directing the Los Angeles premiere of a play called Absent Friends by one of my absolutely favorite British authors, Alan Ayckbourn. I directed a lot of his plays. Well, one of the acts is an after-dinner gathering of a small group of friends in one of their houses. And they're there to talk about an absent friend. And they all get a bit oiled while one of them gets absolutely hammered, reminiscing about that absent friend who had recently drowned. Well, he becomes argumentative with one of the other ones, and two of the men decide it's time to take him outside, but he can barely walk. He's so drunk. So they have to hold him under the arms and walk him out quickly before a fight starts. Well, as often happens in rehearsal, we didn't quite have the dimensions of the stage and placement of the furniture worked out yet. And because of this, the exit to take the argumentative drunk off stage was blocked by an armchair. Well, they stopped in front of the chair and looked to me for direction. Well, I was having a load of fun with this scene. So I replied, for now, just walk over it and get on with the scene, which they did. But when they did, the chair slowly fell over backwards. It took me a minute or two to stop laughing. And right then, I realized we had stumbled onto a wonderful sight gag. Keep it, I yelled. At first, the actors didn't want to keep the action in. They were being very serious, playing their characters, and weren't in touch yet with the playfulness of the comedy, even in what could be a very dramatic scene. But I insisted. And every night of performance, they got the biggest laugh of the show, putting a perfect punctuation point on a scene that could have come off morose. Not a good thing in comedy. But to quote Julie Andrews, let's go back to the beginning. A very good place to start. How did I get involved with theater in the first place? After all, I was born a short, cross-eyed kid with a very serious stutter. natural choice to become an actor, right? It started when I was 7 years old and I saw Lawrence of Arabia on the big screen in one of those wonderful palatial theaters that used to exist. I came out of that theater absolutely transfixed. And my mother came to pick me up. I was only 7 years old. And she said, well, how was it? And I said, I want to do that. She said, what, go to Arabia? I said, no. I'm not going to go to Arabia. I want to open people's minds. I want them to experience something different like I did today. And because of that, Peter O'Toole was always my hero growing up. But I did have that problem to overcome. I was short, cross-eyed, and of course I spoke with a profound stutter. So what do you do? As I grew older, and in high school in particular, I discovered that it was a tool rather than a problem. You see, it's easier to reach the top when nobody sees you as a threat. And in student body politics, I went all the way to student body president, much to my shock. And the people who made fun of me when I was a freshman were my friends and my collaborators as I went on. This is a very important lesson that I learned when I went into business. Yes, it's true. If you maintain a low profile, it can take longer to rise. Of course it can. However, your position is much more solid because believe me, and those of you that have worked in the corporate world, you know this is true. When the knives are out, well, it's best to stand back and let the others eliminate themselves. That also brings up another lesson, which is never get in the middle of a dogfight. You're almost bound to get bitten. So how did I first get on stage? Actually, like Betty, it was in ballet. I had seen a ballet class when I was visiting Washington, D.C., and once again, I was transfixed, and I really wanted to do that. It wasn't so much I wanted to be a ballet dancer, but it's just something I wanted to do. I had always loved classical music, and what's ballet? It's classical music in motion. So I ended up at the studio of Tatiana Ryobochinska and David Lachine. Now, those are names you may not recognize today, but in the mid-20th century, they were the greatest stars of the ballet world. David was the head of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. Tatiana was one of his leading ladies and was famous. You probably don't know this. She was famous for comic roles in ballet. Nobody ever thinks of comic roles in ballet. Talk about dancing outside the box. Now, you've seen both of them, though you don't know it. If you've ever seen the film Fantasia, and if you remember the scene with the hippopotamus and the ostriches, and of course, Ali, the alligator. Well, Tatiana was the hippopotamus, and David was Ali, the alligator. They choreographed it, they filmed it, and then the animators went to work animating what they had done. Well, for some reason, David took a real shine to me. So did Tanya, and I never really understood that. I was a stocky kid, again, short. I didn't have the beautiful lines that a ballet dancer should have, but I finally figured out what it was. Quite simply, I was always there. I would ride my bicycle about 10 miles from where I lived to Beverly Hills, and I'd be there at least a half an hour before class or rehearsal. David was always putting me into his productions. And often he would sit outside on the grass with me and talk about his life. Probably told me some things he shouldn't have told a 13-year-old, but his life and how he escaped Russia when the Bolshevik Revolution occurred. And he became a real mentor of mine. Now, that's a big lesson right there for business. Be there. Show up. And another thing is that in ballet, and if you've known anybody who was a dancer, there's a lot of pain involved. Even the best, a lot of pain. But if you love what you're doing, if you're having fun, playful, if you're having fun, well, fun creates joy, and joy makes the pain worth it. When I was working, some places that I worked, I had to do 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And if I believed in what I was doing, and if I could make it fun, it was fine. I didn't have a family then. So I was able to learn and rise by just being there and by doing the work and the preparation. You know, there's a very popular mental issue these days called impersonator syndrome, where people become incapacitated because they think, oh, I'm no good, I can't really do this. Well, I have a simple solution for that. Impersonator syndrome comes from a natural feeling when you take on a new role that you've got some work to do. You've got some learning to do. And rather than feel that you can't do it, you can't possibly do it, why are you here? The answer is, it's got to be done. And someone's got to do it. And if not me, who? And if you can turn that feeling of helplessness into that, well, you move forward. When I worked at Disney, I was in way over my head as far as I thought. So I just put my head down, nose to the wheel, and just learned and progressed and had a very happy time there. Actually, the best job I ever had. The years I spent there were the most wonderful place on earth, as it's supposed to be. When I went to college at UCLA in the theater department, there was a man that I greatly admired, Michael Gordon. He was a director. If you've seen the film Cyrano de Bergerac, he directed that. And the leading actor won the Academy Award for Best Acting. He directed all the Rock Hudson, Doris Day films, which he said, you know, those films never should have been made, but darn, they were well directed. And Michael was just somebody that everybody looked up to. Well, at the end of my freshman year, I was walking down the hall. He popped out of his office and said, Carl, join me. And okay. So I went into his office and I sat across from him at his desk. And he said, you know, you're not exactly the matinee idol type. You don't have the face, you don't have the good looks that are going to put, I mean, you're not a bad looking guy, but you don't have the looks that are going to put butts in seats. You may want to think about doing something else. Well, I walked out of there. At first, I was crushed, as you can imagine. An 18-year-old kid who's worked for many years towards a certain goal, being told this by somebody that he really admired. But that feeling quickly turned in, I'm going to show him. And I began showing up in all of his directing classes with directors wanting to put me into their scenes that they were presenting for his class. And I became a mainstay of his directing class, playing a whole slew of roles. There was no glory in that, but there was a lot of good, hard work. And because I loved so much what I was doing, I was willing to rehearse these scenes until 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then go to a coffee shop and do the work I was supposed to be doing for my classes. Now, what does this end up being? If you know what you want, and you know most people have no idea what they want. If you ask them, they'll have trouble telling you. But if you know what you want, and you follow the flow that leads to that end, it may take you into some very interesting places, even unexpected ones. My life was not planned out. I didn't have a plan. I just had a destination that I desperately wanted to get to. And it wasn't to be rich. It wasn't to be famous. Actually, I didn't particularly want to be famous. I wanted to be one of those actors that you see all the time, but you don't really know their name, because I wanted to be able to go out to a restaurant every once in a while. So money and fame was not what I was after. It was the joy and the love of performing. Follow the flow. The fact that I ended up as a director of IT was never on my agenda. I didn't even take computers or computer science in school. It turned out that what I had learned in the theater as a director, putting teams together and making them work, that was my skill. And that's what I was hired for. And every person that I worked for ended up hiring me when they moved to another company, because they knew I could put teams together. And I hired people that knew a lot more about IT than I did. I just maintained the teams. So that's another way that theater, my experience in theater, working with actors, a group of actors who on opening night have an awful lot at stake and they're trusting you to get them there. Being able to work with that helped a lot when I got to business. Well, after 3 years at UCLA, I auditioned. I put together all the money I had and flew to New York and auditioned for the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. I had done a summer workshop there, and I decided that was the training that I want. I was up against 2,100 other people for 21 places. And somehow I got in. And again, I think it may have been first of all, the experience that I got at UCLA and in Michael Gordon's directing classes, and just the fact that I loved what I was doing and they could see that. Well, while I was at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, I worked with many directors, and one of the very best that I worked with was a gentleman named Jeff Bullen. He just retired this past year from the Academy. Now, remember, I was there 1975 through 1977. He had a long and glorious stay there. He was a wonderful director, but he also loved the French language. In fact, he translated Feydeau farces into English. That was one of his side jobs. Learned a very important lesson about communication. In one of the plays he was directing me in, he had a habit where he'd say, all right, now, Carl, I want you to go over to the table, pick up your glass, look at it, and I want to have a feeling of je sois aujourd'hui, as a vu, and a venu. My reaction was, what the hell? I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't speak French. If you want me to do something, say it to me in English, please. Communication. Who's responsible for the message being received? Is it the receiver? No. It is the sender. And that lesson got me through a lot of tough times in business when things went a little sideways, being able to communicate what the problem was and how we were going to approach it and get everybody on board. That was also one of my most useful talents. And Jeff taught me that. Another play I was working on at the Royal Academy, we were doing The Winter's Tale. I was playing the lead, my first Shakespearean lead on a London stage, American Shakespearean lead, London stage, no pressure, right? Well, we would rehearse, and the director, whose name I won't mention, but his initials were Jonathan Chadwick, the director would sit in the back. We were rehearsing in an upstairs room at a pub. He would sit in the back and down beer after beer after beer. And when we were done rehearsing a scene, we'd all turn to him and say, well, how can we improve this? What do you think? And his answer always was, you're doing fine, no problem. Let's move on to the next scene. As opening night approached. By the way, my leading lady was Juliet Stevenson, who is Dame Juliet Stevenson today. You've probably seen her. Most of her work is in theater, but she is known for Bend It Like Beckham, a film that she got quite a bit of notoriety for. As we approached opening night, there was an uneasy feeling amongst all of us that this probably wasn't going to go well. But of course, you always have that feeling that was so well portrayed in Shakespeare in Love, the idea that it'll all work out on opening night. So you go forward and you do what you can. It was a disaster. It was one of the best remedies for insomnia ever devised by man. Well, after opening night, I went to the bar in the academy, and about 2 feet away from me there was Jonathan, downing a beer. I think he would have had to be surgically have his hand removed from a beer mug. And he looked at me and he said, where do you suppose we went wrong? It's a good thing that murder is illegal, because one would have occurred right there, right then. So what's the lesson here? When you find yourself in a position with no leadership, someone needs to pick up the ball and run with it. Someone needs to take that position. Here's one of the things we might have done. We might have, when Jonathan was gone, just meet somewhere and start rehearsing scenes and have one of the actors not in that scene do the directing. May not have been the best show ever, but it would have been a hell of a lot better than what we ended up with. And the audience wouldn't have been put through quite so much pain as we delivered during that show. And can you imagine what it was like showing up to do that show night after night after night, knowing what was going to happen? And that's on us for not taking charge and fixing it. We should have, we didn't. While I was at the Academy, one of the first shows that they did was a production of Hamlet starring Albert Finney, and Angela Lansbury played Hamlet's mother. Now, the reviews for Angela were not all that great. And the funny thing is, much of the cast turned their backs on her. Amazingly, a woman that even up to that point had had such an illustrious career. But she became radioactive to the rest of the cast. Well, she finally had to leave the cast to go do a show on Broadway. She had a commitment she needed to fulfill. By the way, that show was Antonio, the demon barber of Fleet Street, Sweeney Todd, a performance that became one of the legendary performances of Broadway. Anyone who saw it can feel it, not just remember it, to this day. Well, on her last night, Angela brought in cases of some of the finest champagne she could find and a spread of food that I, at that time, couldn't even imagine, and held a party for the whole cast backstage. I had never seen such class before in my life. Someone who, during a tough time, turned that around. And I think nobody who was working at the theater at that time forgot the class that Angela Lansbury showed. And I took that, when I was in business, I took that lesson just one step further. How do you show class in business? Well, whenever I or my team failed and did not shower themselves with glory, I made sure that my boss heard it from me first. I would be in there first thing on Monday morning saying, this happened. We did not shower ourselves with glory here, but here's how we're going to fix it, and here's how it will never happen again. And what I did was make sure that he wasn't caught by surprise by someone in another department. And he saw that I had the integrity, that I could bring out my own failures, my team's failures, and come up with a solution to the problem. And I really do give Angela Lansbury credit for teaching me that one. Taking risks in, I mean, all great art, literature, performing arts, everything is a risk. The really great works are risky. And so with business. Think about it. Airplanes, electricity, vaccines, nuclear energy, all of them came with financial and physical risks. And they changed the world. Nothing really important happens without some kind of risk involved. And yeah, it creates nervousness, doesn't it? I can tell you on stage, every time you walk out on that stage, It's a risk. And there was a time when I lost my nervousness. I would walk out on stage and it was like walking into my living room. I can tell you that during that period, I did the worst acting of my life. Nervousness is a tool. It brings the adrenaline out. It makes you work harder. It makes you reach and risk because you know you have to come up to a level that maybe is not normal in your life. And every time you walk out on stage, if you feel a little nervous, good for you. Don't ever lose it. Use it. And in business, you'll find, particularly in the modern world, layoffs they're just a common part of any career. The idea that you work for one company for your whole career, those days are gone, long gone. But that first layoff, that can be a soul crusher. And there's something you need to realize. Not everything you lose is a loss. One of the things you gain in a layoff is freedom. And believe me, my first layoff, I was for a year. I couldn't work for a year. I was so crushed by it. But what I found was that I had freedom. I could find a second chance, better job. I had clarity. And once you have clarity, you may find you've been watering dead plants for a long time, and it was time to move on anyway. I've been laid off several times during my business career, and every time I got a better job. And usually one of the people I had worked for before was looking for me and hired me instantly with a much better salary. When I came back, as Patricia mentioned, when I came back to LA, I and a group of actors formed the 21st Street Theater Company. It was a collaborative effort. And I learned there that collaboration works. Don't keep it to yourself. Collaboration works. Getting the right people to collaborate works. Now that really works. And that's an important decision you have to make in your life. Who are you going to surround yourself? Who will you collaborate with? Our first show was one that I directed. We didn't have the money to pay the royalties through our run. We just took a risk and we went on faith. And every weekend we took the box office from that weekend, and I ran down to Samuel French, the publisher, and paid the royalties week after week. And by the end of the run, we had enough money that we never had to worry about that ever again because the show was a hit. Thank God. But a funny thing happened during that. People began calling after they saw the great reviews in the LA Times and other papers, and they wanted tickets. And they would call and they would say, "How much are your tickets?" We say, "They're $5." They'd say, "What? $5? What happened? Did you lose the actors? What, are people sick? Why $5?" We never made that mistake again. After that show, we immediately rose our, we rose our prices. And now we were charging $8. That was a level that people seemed to accept at the time. Remember, this was a long time ago. Valuable lesson in theater, valuable lesson in business. And of course, this was the business of theater. Never undervalue yourself or your product. People equate price with quality. People equate salary with quality. I never negotiated a salary during my early years in business. But after one of my layoffs, I negotiated salary, and I got about 30% more than what they were offering. And that was I had been undervaluing myself all along. Don't do that. Don't undervalue your product. Don't undervalue yourself. And then we look at reviews in theater. Well, we have reviews in business too, don't we? A great friend and mentor of mine, a man who had been in the theater for many, many years, told me once when we had great reviews, he said, don't pay attention to them. You know, just like the bad reviews, they're tomorrow's birdcage liner. And he was right. He was right. The only thing important in evaluations, in reviews, are what you can learn from them and what you can improve upon. And by the way, everyone has a right to criticize, but you get to choose what's a valid criticism and how to fix it. So I want to wrap this up with just a few thoughts, actually a few thoughts from my book here. And that is that the symbiotic relationship between creativity and business acumen is a powerful catalyst for innovation and success. Think of it as going back to being a kid again, and not just for the fun of it, but because it actually gets the gears moving. Think of it more as a strategic imperative. If we make our workplaces and mindsets all about fun and trying out new ideas, we're bound to hit on something that propels them towards novel solutions and breakthrough achievements. The journey of rekindling creativity must be a continuous one, requiring a commitment to viewing the world with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to explore the unknown. In doing so, we not only enhance our professional endeavors, but also enrich our personal lives, tapping into a source of joy and fulfillment that fuels our collective journey towards excellence. Back to you, Patricia. I do love that sound.
I know we all love that sound, and we now get to the point of the program, and your question is, first let me make a couple of comments. Several of us in the chat, and you know I don't usually look at chat, are amazed and impressed with the quality of your words. Susan Rowan and I both love ballet is classical music in motion, and not everything you lose is a loss. These are wonderful, wonderful phrases. And I will put this on gallery view for me so I can see if people put their hands up.
I need to change the screen here.
Okay,
let me do that for you. Here we go. And remove spotlight.
And while you're doing that, also
there we go.
Claudette Good O'Neill came in to the meeting. She has a client at 7 o'clock and always races in. Tanner Hope and Tom Kowalski have all joined us. And the first question goes to Antonio White.
Thank you, Madam President. Carl, thank you for a wonderful presentation today. I was looking forward to it, and you did not disappoint. I want to thank you for a great start to our Wednesday, and so many incredible nuggets. Not everything that you lose is a loss. So many, I mean, we have a book full of opportunities here to learn from today's lesson. I'm curious for you, now with the book that you have, what is your mission with your book? What is it that you hope people will take away from the efforts that you put into this book? Because I know creating a book is very difficult to do here. What do you hope that people will learn or take away from your current book? And thank you again.
Well, first of all, everything that I've done since Lawrence of Arabia has been to enhance people's lives, to improve it. Now, you may say that's a rather lofty aim. Is it? Is it really? I'm not sure it is. And the book is just another way to do that. Yes, as you say, Antonio, there's lots of nuggets there, and I'm filling the book with as many nuggets as I possibly can, though I want to keep it a nice short read. But that's my goal. Now, as you probably know, Douglas and I are trying to form a consulting group, and I hope to use the book as a calling card, basically. I do not expect to make any money on it. In fact, I will probably spend a fair amount of money on it. That's okay. I can do that now in my life. I can afford to do that. So that's my aim. If a few people read it and have some fun with it, or actually learn something that they can use in their lives and in their business, that's what I'm all about. And as a calling card to our consulting business, hopefully it will work as my views on business. I don't think they're wildly different from a lot of the experts out there, but they do come from a different angle. And so that's what I'm trying to show, is that we can look at this from all kinds of different angles here, can't we?
Wonderful. Next question, Janelle Barlow.
There. It's a real difficulty working with 3 computer screens. So
Oh.
I can never get my cursor where I want it to be. Carl, thank you. That was stirring. It was evocative. I loved it. Thank you so much. And especially how open you were at sharing with your life. And I just wanted to say this, because I always tie everything back to what I'm working on about complaints. I just finished reading the book, the Washington book by, let's see, he's got 3 names in Spanish. Anyway, it's on Amazon, the Washington book. And he looks at all of the books that have been written about politics in DC. Fascinating book. At the very end, he gets into this notion, and I'm not quite sure how he got there, is that the theater, it gets critiqued, and those critiques can destroy a play. They're the opening ones. My husband's uncle was one of the major theater critiques in New York City in the 1960s, and did that until he was killed in a plane crash. And those people who did the critiques were both loved and hated. I mean, they were like, who are you? You're some sort of you glom onto these things. You didn't do any of it, and you can kill these plays. And that's exactly what can happen. But the point that this guy makes in the Washington book is that it's an exchange. The critique, all the work that we do ourselves on stage, that critique is a communication, and it has to be there. And for any of us to disabuse who those people are who are giving critiques is a real mistake, because they're part of the process. It's that exchange between the actor and the person who's giving the critique. I'm not sure I have a question here, but I think it relates to so much of what I'm working on Complaint is a Gift in Business. It's that customer complains and then the business can respond or not. And you said something about you don't have to accept this. I think you do have to accept it. You have to see what's there. You have to see if you can learn from it, because that exchange between the doing and the critiquing is a critical part of everything that gets done in this world. Everything.
Well, I think you're absolutely right there, Janelle. But and maybe I didn't word it well. The important thing about critiques and reviews is what you can learn from them.
Yes, you did say that.
Yes, and that makes them very, very, very valuable. Unfortunately, in theater and in movie critics, there's a lot of people who have no business being a critic. one of the things about Roger Ebert that I always loved was that even when he criticized a film, you knew he loves film. And that's a man I want to listen to, that he loves it. And so when he critiques something, it's coming from there. And so in theater, it's a little bit different. In business, an evaluation can give you real insights into what's expected of you and how you can fit into the organization better. And so I don't want to say, I don't ever want to say that they have no value, but it's up to you to figure out where's the meat in there. And a lot of times people, when they're criticizing a business, they have no idea what they're talking about. However, it's important to note that, okay, there's an itch. How do I scratch it? Maybe they don't know what the problem is, the real problem is, and you have to dig down to find it. But at least they brought it up. So, okay, good enough.
Right. And some of these things are completely off scale. I remember a piece of criticism I received when speaking, and somebody wrote on it, "Why does she have to be so tall?" And
fix that. Go on.
And yeah, I read that, and of course, I can't do anything about that. But it did occur to me, and this was an important lesson at that time, and that is that obviously somehow or other I didn't get through to that person, and they felt the need to. That was an attack. I mean, that's an attack? Why does she have to be so tall? I mean, everybody would realize that that's an attack. So what didn't I do, or what did I do to get her into that space? And so you could say that she didn't have any right to make that critique, but I really attempted to learn from it, and that was a big lesson for me. I want to continue to learn from all the critiques, all of them.
It may also have been an attempt at humor.
Backfired. I would think if Janelle is still pondering about it decades later. Okay, let's move on to Susan Rowan, who has her hand up.
Okay, the idea of what people write in reviews, I think we need to remember it is only their opinion. And remember, I can't stand most pasta. Everyone else loves it. Doesn't matter. We have our opinions, and people have made and broken restaurants, plays, etc. There was one play on Broadway. I did see it here virtually. It won Tonys, but it closed in 8 months. So there you go. But Carl, you said something. First of all, there were so many brilliant bon mots that I've been taking notes and putting quotations around it and putting your name there, so I know exactly who said it, so I don't think I might have said it. I give you full credit. But you said something so important, that you had a very intense stutter. And given that we have a president who has worked through it, can you share how the acting, or did it help you overcome it? Or because that is a major accomplishment that I hope you address in your books, etc. Because there's so many who still have that, and they don't have your wherewithal to do the work.
In my case, the acting did it. If you saw the film The King's Speech, one of the things that he is asked to do is to read out loud. And that was one of the things that helped him. Well, memorizing a script is what helped me. I knew what the next word was. My parents took me to a speech therapist when I was very, very young, who was an idiot. She spent an hour trying to get a 6-year-old kid to say that he's been molested by his parents. Just give me a friggin' break. And I may have only been 6 years old, but I knew an idiot when I saw one. But um, it is for me what it was is that my brain often works faster than my mouth. And my, and for a lot of people, their mouth works faster than their brain. Isn't that true? So knowing the words in advance and being able to prepare my muscles for it, that helped me a great deal. Joe Biden's done a very nice job on his, although it does come back as
Mhm.
you get older, and you can see it in him.
Mhm.
Some people accuse him of having moments where he blanks out or has goes into a trance. No, he's trying to form the words in his mouth, and as one who's been through that, I can see it so clearly.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you for
that's,
that.
he's a politician, he has to deal with it.
Thank you, Carol.
All right, great. And next comment, Randall Reeder.
All right, quick comment. Those of you who like country music know that Mel Tillis
Yes.
stutterer, and when he sings, there's no stuttering. I haven't heard him speak, but anyway, my main question or comment, talk about critics in Toastmasters. All of us who are in or have been in Toastmasters know that we do evaluations, and I like your positive comment, Carl, about the critic, Roger Ebert. In other words, I would say it from a Toastmaster standpoint. If I'm evaluating somebody on their presentation, they need to know that I love a good speech, and I'm trying to help them become an excellent speaker. So there's that background is really important. You're not just critiquing and complaining and whatever. So thank you for bringing that out. And you had several other great lines also that I appreciated. Thank you.
Well, one of the shows I did was another Alan Ayckbourn play called The Norman Conquest, and it's actually 3 plays, but it's the same characters, the same weekend, the same story, and the conceit is when the characters exit one room, they're entering another room in the other play. Well, a little work of genius. Well, opening night for the first play. And this is one of the funniest plays I've ever worked on. Silence. You could hear a pin drop. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, where did we go wrong? What, I'm laughing, and I've seen the thing 100 times, right? And then the review came out the next day. It was the best reviews we ever got at the theater. A fantastic review. Just for some reason, there was an atmosphere in that audience that they didn't want to laugh. But there was another critic from the Times. They sent 2 critics. And another critic from the Times who I knew actually at UCLA. He was a musical comedy actor. And I'm sorry, I said that almost with disdain. I have a great deal of respect for musical comedy actors, but he wrote that Carl Walsh obviously has no idea about the English aristocracy. Now, the play is about a working class family. And so this was a guy who was just looking for something to criticize. And I knew he was leaving in a couple of weeks to go to New York to be a director. And I wrote him a letter correcting him. And I ended it with, great, good luck in New York. May you get critics every bit as good as yourself.
Great. All right. You can see the audience loves that. Carl, can you tell us any other famous people, perhaps some in Los Angeles who weren't famous when you were working with them, but went on and to become more household names?
Well, Robin Williams would certainly be one. I had a Robin and I were often up for the same roles. And I'm not sure why, but maybe because we're both short. I don't know. But so we sort of got to get to know each other, sitting in rooms, and we began acknowledging each other. Oh, you again? Okay. And so I went to the Improv one night. And I didn't know Robin Williams did stand-up comedy, and he was on the bill that night with a lot of really major stars. Well, he blew the place away. I mean, he just hit it out of the park. And he and I went to the bar afterwards and talked. And he was so depressed. And he was saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that last bit. It didn't get the laughs." And I said, "No, it didn't get all the laughs. It was a piece of humanity, which most stand-up comics don't do. Nowadays, I would say Billy Crystal is the only other one that does. You put humanity into your act." By the way, in his act, he did a quick bit on if an alien did Hamlet. Guess what came out of that? Mork and Mindy, right? Someone saw it. But anyway, he was so depressed, and I was there trying to build him up, saying that was the best stand-up I've ever seen. You're amazing. I didn't see him much after that because his career took off. Mork and Mindy took off. In Los Angeles, well, I'll tell you, I didn't meet him in Los Angeles, but in Edinburgh, as a matter of fact, Burt Lancaster. We happened to be sitting next to each other in the top row in a very large theater, both of us in the back row there. And we had a marvelous conversation. He was quite interested in what I was doing at the Royal Academy. And afterwards, we met outside the theater, and my parting words to him were, well, he said to me, "Good luck with your career." And I said, "Well, good luck with yours too." And what do you know? He left and did Atlantic City, which was a whole new stage of his career at that point. So, he was always a favorite of mine. Hollywood. I'm better connected in England, actually. I mean,
English stars.
The people that I met there, Laurence Olivier, Ralph Richardson, Peggy Ashcroft, Tom Stoppard. I don't know how many of you know Tom Stoppard, but with Alan Ayckbourn, I consider them the great writers of the late 20th century, and just a really nice guy. One of his plays, Jumpers, was going on at the National Theater, and before going home, every once in a while, I'd go into the backstage bar, and we became acquainted, and he began buying me drinks every time I went in there, and we'd just talk. And I learned it is so much fun just to sit down with people like I did with Boris Johnson and just talk. It doesn't have to be about the business at hand or anything. Just talk. And I've learned a great deal from that. Other people, Cheetah Rivera. God bless Cheetah Rivera and Gwen Verdon when they were doing Chicago. I was able to go backstage and meet them, and just for me, they will always be the true royalty of Broadway. They are the greatest.
Well, wonderful. I could certainly regale you with tales. My brother starts his presentations very often reading bad reviews and critiquing the critiquers to show they really didn't know what they were talking about. And he often pastes bad critiques on Facebook. that people have said. And people ask him, why do you do? And he said, well, it keeps me humble. I'll share the bad news. My sister-in-law, Toya Wilcox, has made movies with Katharine Hepburn and Laurence Olivier,
Oh.
the Ebony Tower. Her job was to have dinner with him every night to stop him drinking, but he kept going to the bathroom, so she followed, and of course he wasn't really going to the bathroom. Anyway, so this is, presentations like this remind you of so much, and as Janelle said, there are business applications. Randall Reeder also was very impressed. He might have paraphrased it, but said about, when you're not being directed, you have to step up and take control yourselves. I know I have been in some work situations when no one was in charge, so I stepped up because someone had to be, not that I chose to be. So many lessons in life and business from the theatre, which I know we're all fascinated with showbiz. It's even royalty is fascinated,
Yeah.
whereas most people look up to royalty, but royalty is also fascinated with movie stars and actors.
Yes, but aren't they in a play?
Well, really, they are. So much of what they do is
So much
in
is
front
theater
cameras,
of what they do. So they're kindred spirits. They are.
And you think about royal funerals and coronations. I mean, these are scripted out years
Yes.
before they are needed. I always remember reading about the Queen Mother going to the rehearsal of her funeral when she was alive.
Yeah.
She wanted to hear the hymns and what. So
Yeah.
yeah. Life is what is it? Give me the line.
Life is a
All-
stage.
The Shakespeare line we heard.
Yeah,
it
the life
Yes.
is a stage.
All the world's a stage,
Yeah,
stage,
and
all
all
the
the
world is a
men
stage.
and women upon it are the actors.
Now I should
They
remember that
enter
because I
and
put
exit.
that. Yeah, I put that when I was promoting your event
Yes.
on LinkedIn. So that was wonderful. Well, another spectacular meeting. Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you for your active participation. And we look forward to seeing you next week, where Carl will be the meeting manager. Susan will do the introduction from Las Vegas, and I will welcome everyone from my suite. So thank you for all our board members and past presidents who make what we do possible. And I will turn off the recording while we're all applauding Carl, and then I will turn off the recording.